The Galactic Council chambers shimmered with soft hues of green and blue, the light emanating from intricate crystalline columns that spiraled toward the domed ceiling. Delegates from over 100 species filled the vast circular room, their forms diverse: feathers, scales, exoskeletons, and bioluminescent skin reflecting their respective worlds. Despite the grandeur, the council session had become tediously routine. Trade routes, resource disputes, and minor skirmishes dominated the agenda. High Consul Zarek Torash, his serpentine body coiled on an elevated dais, flicked his forked tongue in frustration. His patience wore thin. These minor matters were beneath him, yet they consumed most of his time. He glanced toward the vast viewport at the chamber's edge, where the stars of the Orion Arm glimmered. The sight usually calmed him, but today, it failed to ease his irritation. Suddenly, the chamber doors slid open with a sharp hiss, interrupting the drone of a delegate mid-speech. A Zalnari officer rushed in, his iridescent scales dulled with panic. He bowed hastily before addressing the consul. "High Consul, forgive the intrusion, but we have a situation." His voice trembled. Zarek's eyes narrowed. "Speak." "A fleet," the officer stammered. "A massive fleet has entered orbit around the Citadel. They carry human insignias." The room fell silent. Delegates exchanged incredulous glances, some emitting guttural growls or hisses of disbelief. "Impossible," Zarek said, his tone laced with disdain. "Humanity lacks the resources for such an endeavor. Their so-called fleets are laughable." The officer swallowed hard. "High Consul, these ships are unlike anything we've seen. Their size, their energy signatures." Before he could finish, a booming voice resonated through the chamber, cutting through the tension like a blade. "This is Captain Elias Varon of the United Human Colonies Interstellar Navy," it declared. The holographic communications system activated unbidden, projecting an image into the center of the room. A man stood tall, clad in a sleek black uniform adorned with silver insignias. His eyes, a piercing gray, seemed to bore into each delegate present. His expression was stern, his posture commanding. "You have underestimated humanity for centuries," Varon said, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "Today that ends. We demand recognition as equals among the galactic powers. If this demand is not met, we will have no choice but to secure it by force." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. A delegate from the aquatic Thrishan species, her translucent form glowing faintly, leaned forward. "Surely this is a bluff," she said, though her tone betrayed doubt. Zarek raised a hand, silencing the room. He turned his gaze back to the hologram. "Captain Varon, humanity's audacity knows no bounds. What could you possibly hope to achieve here?" Elias's lips curled into a faint smile. "Why don't you see for yourself?" As if on cue, the Citadel's external sensors displayed a live feed on the viewport. Gasps erupted anew. Hundreds of ships filled the void, their sleek, angular designs radiating an imposing energy. The flagship, Unity, dwarfed even the Council's own dreadnoughts. Pulsing with an otherworldly blue glow, its surface bristled with weaponry that seemed to hum with restrained power. Zarek's coils tightened. "This is madness," he muttered. Turning back to the hologram, he said, "You dare threaten the Council? Your species walks a perilous line, Captain. We could erase you with a single command." "Could you?" Elias countered. His voice was calm, almost conversational, but his eyes held a steely challenge. "You'll find your fleets vastly outclassed. We've spent centuries preparing for this moment, while you sat complacent, dismissing us as insignificant. That was your first mistake." A tense silence followed, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of an insected delegate's mandibles. Elias continued, "But this doesn't have to end in war. Humanity seeks only what is fair, recognition, equality, and a seat at this council. Deny us, and you'll force our hand. You have 24 hours to decide." The hologram vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Zarek turned to his advisors, his voice low and seething. "How did this happen? Where did they acquire such technology?" One of his generals, A hulking Graskian with jagged horns spoke. They must have reverse-engineered tech from old conflicts. Their resourcefulness has always been troubling. They are a plague, Zarek spat. And plagues must be eradicated before they spread. A slender, bird-like delegate from the Alvarii species interjected, her melodic voice urgent. Perhaps we should consider their demands. If their fleet is as powerful as it seems, conflict could devastate the entire region. Cowardice, growled a reptilian representative. We should strike now, before they can consolidate further. The room descended into chaos, voices overlapping in heated debate. Aboard the Unity, Elias watched the Council's reaction through a live feed. His second-in-command, Commander Lina Zhou, approached. They're panicking, she observed, her tone laced with satisfaction. Exactly as we predicted. Elias nodded but remained pensive. Panic can lead to desperate decisions. We must be prepared for retaliation. Zhou hesitated before speaking again. Do you think they'll agree to our terms? I don't know, Elias admitted. But if they don't, we'll show them just how far humanity has come. This isn't just about survival, Lina. It's about respect. We've earned it. She smiled faintly. And if they don't see that, we'll make them. Back in the council chamber, Zarek dismissed the assembly, retreating to his private quarters. He activated a secure communication link, contacting a shadowy figure. The humans have overstepped, Zarek hissed. Prepare the strike teams. If they think they can intimidate us, they are gravely mistaken. The figure nodded. It will be done, High Consul. As the transmission ended, Zarek stared out at the human fleet, his eyes burning with fury. On board the Unity, Elias stood before his crew. This is the moment we've prepared for, he said, his voice steady. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity is no longer a footnote in their history. We are its future. The crew erupted in cheers, their resolve unshaken. Elias turned back to the viewport, where the stars framed the Galactic Council's citadel like a jewel. His gaze hardened. Let's hope they see reason, he muttered. For their sake. The celestial citadel loomed in the viewport of the Unity's command deck, a beacon of galactic power. Captain Elias Varon stood silently, his hands clasped behind his back, as the crew worked in hushed focus. The weight of humanity's future pressed against his shoulders, but his expression remained composed, almost unreadable. Commander Lina Zhou approached, her voice low. We've intercepted transmissions between the Council factions. They're in disarray. Some want to negotiate, but others, they're pushing for a preemptive strike. Elias turned slightly, his gray eyes locking onto hers. Let them argue. It buys us time. What's the status of our defensive grid? Fully operational, Zhou replied. If they try anything, they'll regret it. Elias nodded, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. He had expected resistance, but the scale of the opposition was daunting. Humanity's fleet was powerful, but it was a gamble, a show of force meant to deter, not destroy. The Council's reaction would decide whether his gamble paid off. Open a channel to the Council, Elias ordered. In the Galactic Council chamber, tension crackled like static in the air. High Consul Zarek sat coiled on his dais, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on the holographic projection of Captain Varon. Around him, the chamber buzzed with whispered arguments and sharp exchanges. Captain Varon, Zarek began, his tone dripping with disdain. You have made your intentions clear. What you failed to grasp is the magnitude of your recklessness. Humanity is a minor species, barely a footnote in galactic history. You overreach. Elias's hologram stood unmoved, his expression calm but resolute. What you failed to grasp, High Consul, is that humanity's so-called minor status no longer applies. You ignored us for centuries. We grew in your shadow, learned from your mistakes, and prepared for this day. Dismiss us at your peril. A feathered delegate from the Alvarii species leaned forward, her voice softer but no less pointed. Captain, surely you understand the precarious position you've placed us all in. Such aggression could destabilize the entire Orion arm. Is this truly what humanity desires? Elias's gaze shifted toward her. Humanity desires recognition. Equality. Nothing more, nothing less. But we will not be denied any longer. If that destabilizes your status quo, perhaps it's the status quo that needs re-evaluating. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. Some alien representatives voiced cautious support for humanity's demands, while others called for immediate retaliation. High Consul Zarek raised his voice, silencing the room. You speak of equality, Captain, but your fleet's presence speaks only of dominance. This is not a negotiation, it's coercion. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Elias's hologram leaned forward slightly, his tone sharpening. And do not mistake patience for submission. Humanity is done waiting for your approval. The galaxy will adapt, with or without the Council's blessing. As the transmission ended, Elias turned to Zhou. How did they take it? Divided, she replied. Just as we expected. Some will come around, but Zarek, he won't bend. Elias exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. He's the one we need to worry about. His pride won't let him concede, not without a fight. A junior officer interrupted. Sir, we've detected unusual energy signatures near the Citadel. It's consistent with stealth field generators. Zhou's eyes narrowed. They're deploying covert operatives. Elias's voice was calm, but his words carried an edge. Prepare countermeasures. Let them make their move. We'll remind them who they're dealing with. Hours later, in the shadowed corridors of the Unity, a team of black-clad intruders moved silently. Their stealth suits shimmered faintly, blending with their surroundings as they advanced toward the ship's core. They carried advanced disruptor devices designed to disable key systems. Unbeknownst to them, they were being watched. Hidden surveillance drones tracked their every move, relaying data back to the command deck. They're heading for the reactor, Zhou reported. Let them, Elias said, his voice steady. Activate the containment protocol once they're inside. Minutes later, the intruders reached the reactor chamber. As they placed their disruptors on critical junctions, a sudden hum filled the air. The room's exits sealed with an audible clang, and a containment field shimmered into place. A voice echoed through the chamber, cold and measured. You've underestimated us, just like your leaders. Humanity learned long ago that trust is a luxury we can't afford. Did you really think we wouldn't see this coming? The operatives exchanged panicked glances as automated defense turrets emerged from the walls, their targeting systems locking onto the intruders. Back on the command deck, Zhou glanced at Elias. What do you want to do with them? Elias considered for a moment. Send them back to the Council. Alive, but empty-handed. Let them carry a message. Humanity is prepared for whatever they throw at us. The captured operatives were ejected in an escape pod, their failure broadcast directly to the Council chamber. Delegates watched the live feed in stunned silence as Zarek's coils tightened in visible fury. This is unacceptable, the Council roared. Humanity dares to humiliate us. A reptilian delegate growled. They have made their point clear. They are not to be trifled with. Zarek's gaze swept the room, his voice a cold hiss. Their defiance cannot go unanswered. Prepare the fleet. If they want war, we'll give it to them. The Alvarii delegate spoke again, her voice pleading. High Council, this path leads to devastation. Humanity's fleet is formidable. There must be another way. There is no other way. Zarek snapped. Humanity has forced our hand. Aboard the Unity, Elias and his senior officers reviewed the intercepted communications. They're mobilizing, Zhou said grimly. Elias nodded, his expression somber. As expected. We'll hold our ground. This isn't just about humanity anymore. If we succeed, we'll set a precedent for every species they've oppressed. And if we fail? Zhou asked quietly. Elias's voice softened. Then humanity will go down fighting, knowing we didn't bow to tyranny. As the fleet braced for the inevitable clash, Elias stared out at the stars. The Council's pride and humanity's defiance had set the stage for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy. All that remained was to see who would blink first. The Unity's bridge buzzed with quiet intensity as the human fleet prepared for the Council's inevitable attack. Captain Elias Varon stood at the command console, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Citadel's armada was massive, a swirling constellation of warships converging into an unmistakable formation. "Fleet positioning complete," reported Lieutenant Mara Singh, her fingers dancing over her console. "All systems green. Shields at maximum capacity." Commander Lina Zhou joined Elias, her expression unreadable. "They're moving into an encirclement pattern. Classic Council tactic, overwhelm with numbers and force the enemy into submission." Elias nodded but said nothing, his mind running through contingency plans. The stakes had never been higher. "Open a channel," he said finally. The display shifted to reveal High Consul Zarek aboard the Council's flagship, Dominion. His coiled form radiated disdain, his voice sharp as a blade. "Captain Varon, this is your last chance to surrender. Humanity cannot hope to withstand the might of the Galactic Council." Elias's response was calm but firm. "We will not surrender, High Consul. Humanity seeks peace and equality, but we will not submit to your tyranny." Zarek's eyes narrowed, his forked tongue flickering briefly. "Then you leave us no choice. Prepare for annihilation." The channel cut abruptly. The tension on the Unity's bridge thickened as warning sirens blared. "Multiple energy signatures detected," shouted Lieutenant Singh. "They're powering weapons. Raise shields," Zhou ordered. The first salvo lit up the void, plasma bolts and laser arrays cascading toward the human fleet. The Unity's shields flared as they absorbed the brunt of the attack. Around it, humanity's ships moved with precision, returning fire with weapons that had been honed through decades of secret development. Elias watched the battlefield unfold on the tactical display. The Council's ships were numerous, but their formations were rigid, predictable. Humanity's fleet, smaller but more agile, exploited every gap. Coordinated missile strikes crippled several Council cruisers, while experimental railguns tore through their defenses with brutal efficiency. "Report!" Elias demanded. "Enemy losses are mounting," Singh said, her tone tinged with astonishment. "Their flank is collapsing." Zhou smirked. They weren't ready for this. But Elias remained focused. "Stay vigilant. Desperation makes them dangerous." On the Dominion, Zarek hissed in frustration as reports of losses flooded in. "How are they doing this? Their fleet is a fraction of our size." An aide hesitated before replying. "Their technology is advanced, High Consul. Beyond what we anticipated." Zarek's tail lashed against the floor. "Deploy the dreadnoughts. Wipe them out." 3 massive Council dreadnoughts emerged from the fleet's rear, their sheer size dwarfing every other vessel on the battlefield. Their weapons charged with ominous energy, and even the seasoned crew of the Unity felt a ripple of unease. "Dreadnoughts inbound," Singh warned. "Those things could punch through our shields like paper." Zhou turned to Elias. "Suggestions?" "Focus fire," Elias said decisively. "Target their power cores. If we don't take them out fast, this battle is over." The Unity's railguns locked onto the nearest dreadnought, unleashing a barrage of hypervelocity rounds. Smaller human ships darted around the behemoths, distracting them with hit-and-run tactics. The dreadnoughts retaliated with devastating force, vaporizing 2 frigates in seconds. "Core damage detected on Dreadnought 1, Singh announced. "It's destabilizing." On the display, the targeted dreadnought erupted in a fiery explosion, its debris scattering across the battlefield. Cheers broke out on the bridge, but Elias silenced them with a sharp command. "Focus on the next target. This isn't over." As the battle raged, a sudden alarm drew everyone's attention. "Multiple warp signatures," Singh shouted. "Reinforcements inbound." Elias's jaw tightened. More Council ships surged into the fray, their numbers threatening to overwhelm humanity's fleet. "We can't hold them all," Zhou said grimly. "We don't need to," Elias replied. "Not if we take out their command ship," Without coordination, their fleet will crumble. Singh hesitated. You're talking about the Dominion? Elias's gaze was resolute. Exactly. Target it. The Unity broke formation, leading a direct assault on the Dominion. Council ships swarmed to intercept, but humanity's fleet provided cover, drawing fire and creating an opening. Shields down to 60%. Singh reported as the Unity endured relentless attacks. Hold steady, Elias ordered. The Dominion loomed ahead, its massive hull bristling with weapons. Elias's voice cut through the tension. All railguns, target their bridge. Fire on my command. The seconds stretched as the Unity closed the distance. Plasma fire raked across its shields, and alarms blared, but the crew held firm. Fire! The Unity's railguns unleashed their payload, the projectiles slamming into the Dominion's bridge with pinpoint accuracy. The Council flagship shuddered violently, its command systems failing in a cascade of explosions. On board the Dominion, Zarek was thrown from his dais as systems sparked and failed around him. No, this cannot be, he hissed, his voice drowned out by the chaos. With the Dominion crippled, the Council fleet faltered. Coordination broke down, and panic spread like wildfire. Humanity's ships pressed the advantage, forcing a retreat. Their fleet is retreating, Singh confirmed, disbelief in her voice. We did it. Elias exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Secure the area. Ensure no surprises. Joe approached, a rare smile breaking her usually stoic expression. You pulled it off, Elias. They'll have to listen now. Elias nodded, though his expression remained guarded. This was just the opening move. The real challenge begins now. Hours later, a battered but victorious humanity stood poised on the brink of a new era. The Council's arrogance had been shattered, but the galaxy watched with wary eyes. Elias addressed his crew. Today, we proved that humanity will no longer be ignored. But this victory is not just for us. It's a message to every species yearning for freedom, for equality. Together, we'll build a better galaxy. The crew erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the bridge. Elias turned back to the viewport, where the stars stretched endlessly before them. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.